Well, thanks. First and foremost, thanks, talk. Just for people who, if this is their first time to Venture Cafe or their first time at a Harvard and Tech event or webinar, my name is Gino Gordon. I'm the co-director of the Harvard and Tech Japan. Um, well, first, I just wanted to say, welcome to our third event. Obviously during the COVID crisis, we haven't been able to necessarily be as active as we wanted to, but thanks to Venture Cafe providing us their platform, we're able to really start back up and really start meeting people and kind of introducing new ideas that we're really excited about. And just to talk about the COVID crisis and obviously I feel like that's in the forefront of everybody's mind right now, and that's actually one of the major inspirations for what our current speaker is going to talk about. But during the state of emergency, I think all of us, we were stuck at home and had to find ways to stay productive, and incomes, kind of telework or remote work. And a lot of these large corporations were kind of thrusted into finding out and scrambling how to really stay productive when you're not in front of each other. And I think if you are living in Japan, you kind of understand, based on that kind of traditional culture where FaceTime is extremely important. I've heard from quite a few people saying that there have been some issues and stuff like that. But either way, even with the state of emergency or lockdown per se has been lifted, I truly believe, and I think we can all agree, that the telework is not going to go away. And this is something that's going to stay and I would assume become more of an integral part of Workstyle in Japan. And that being said, I think this is why I'm really excited to introduce you to Brad. Brad, who is the class of Harvard College 03. He's the vice president of project engineering for Mercari, USA. And but he is actually in Japan. So he's placed in Japan, but works with a team globally in the US. So he has a lot of experience of working across two cultures or multiple cultures and multiple time zones. So I felt as though he would be an excellent example or an excellent source to kind of pick his brain and hear about how he manages the team in both America and Japan, but also how you're able to kind of maintain productivity and kind of camaraderie with a team when you can't be face to face, which is something that was really important in Japan. So with that being said, without any further ado, I want to introduce you to Brad. Oh, you're mute, Brad.
See, I know, still all getting used to this. Oh, all right. Yeah, thanks for the intro, Gino, and thanks for the invitation.
No problem.
Let's see if I can share my screen here too. All right. So I put a few slides together. Some of this stuff is stolen from a talk that I did a couple of months ago, and then I added a whole bunch to talk about remote work. And but I don't want to use more than 25, 30 minutes so we can have a lot of time for discussion. One of the great things about this whole world is that we're all just a little box on a screen. And I think hopefully it's easier for anybody to chime in, and we can have a cool discussion. Although I'm actually looking forward to the discussion session after this. I saw that Remo, I haven't used that before, but just the idea of allowing people to, like, making it easier for people to, find a smaller group and have discussions when we're all online is really cool. Right, so before jumping in, some assumptions. I think if you're here, we're talking about tech. We all want to build things for the whole world. One of the cool things about technology is that everything we do is really easy to scale and launch worldwide. In order to do that, we need help from people everywhere. We can't just do it. Even though a lot of startups will start in somebody's garage, as we grow, we need help from a lot of people, from a lot of different backgrounds and a lot of different time zones. So I'm going to talk more about Japan, though, because we're in Japan. And the other assumption is that we're going to be working remotely for a while. I don't know about you guys, but I've gone through alternate stages of denial and acceptance where I'm just like, no, we've got to, like, this is going to go back to normal. And I'm like, oh, it's never going to go back to normal. maybe I should invest in a better external monitor for my desk at home. um, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about how Mercari builds international products today, and then about how we adapted to working remotely. A little bit of background on me. I studied electrical engineering and computer science at Harvard, but actually, when I look back at my time in college, I had more credits in foreign languages, Japanese, Russian, and French than I did in engineering. So I'm not actually sure what I really majored in, but that included 1 year study abroad at KO. So I've been back and forth in Japan a lot since college and studying abroad. There was a few startups. I spent a lot of time at Google Japan here in Tokyo, and then at YouTube here and back in California. And then I joined a startup doing healthcare data analytics called Nuna in San Francisco. And I was there for 3 years. We grew from about 20 to 130 people before I left and joined Mercari in 2017. And at Mercari, I started in the San Francisco office, and then we moved to Palo Alto. And a year and a half ago, I moved out to Tokyo. And now I'm leading the team that internally we call US at Tokyo. And we're mostly doing, product development here in Tokyo for the US app. So Mercari, globally, if you look at our offices, we have a few offices in Japan. Most everybody is here in Tokyo. And in the United States, our biggest office is in Palo Alto, but we also have a sizable team up in Portland, partly doing customer support as well as QA and some other like moderation tasks. And in Boston, we also have a growing engineering office there. So our center of gravity for the US app is actually in Palo Alto, but our team, the Mercari marketplace, I don't know how many, hopefully you guys have used it, started in Japan originally and then branched out to the US pretty quickly. And so our base is common. We share common framework from Japan. But as we grew in the US, we realized that in order to move fast, we really needed to work independently from Japan, and the more decisions we could make on the ground in the US, the better. So we have about half of our development team here in Tokyo and half in Palo Alto, but really our leadership for the Mercari organization, especially marketing and front end facing stuff, is really in Palo Alto. So it's an interesting split where we have teams in two very different time zones working to help make Mercari's marketplace in the US successful. And again, for anybody who hasn't used Mercari, I feel like I have to explain this more in the US than I do in Japan, but basically anybody can buy and sell something online. Just take out your phone, take a picture, list it, and then somebody will buy it. Mercari will facilitate that transaction, hold the buyer's money in escrow until the seller ships it to the buyer. Once the buyer confirms that they have received it, then we release the money, and it's a nice, safe, and really easy way to sell things. So it's kind of an eBay, a really, really simple modern version of eBay is my 30-second version. But when we're building something from Tokyo for the US, we have to keep in mind something. And this is actually advice I give to any product manager, that I would give to any product manager, is to remember that you are not the user. Especially if we're living in Tokyo and we're building something for the US. But even in the US, if you're living in Palo Alto in the Silicon Valley area, you have to keep in mind that you probably aren't anything like most of the users who use the app. And even if you're like some of them, you're not like all of them. I was born and raised in Michigan. And I go to see do this, right? It's like in Michigan, you got the Great Lakes, upper, lower peninsula. See that? Yeah, there we go, right? There we go. So you can always see it on the map here, and you can see in red, this means that when you're talking about a fizzy drink, you call it pop in Michigan. So we'd always have pop and pizza parties when I was growing up. And then when I went off to college to Boston, I suddenly, everybody was saying soda. I remember once I ran into somebody and, I bumped into them and they said, "Oh, no worries." And it was the first time ever that I'd heard somebody say no worries. And I thought oh, is that she was from Canada. And I thought, is that a Canadian thing? And then I realized a lot of people in the US say it too. And we all grew up from, different backgrounds and have different assumptions about, the words that we use, how we interact with other people. And I think that's really true, especially if you're comparing cultures, but even in the US it's really different. Um, for example, in the U.S., we all have college sweatshirts. I didn't actually realize this until I was Googling around to prepare for this presentation, but there's actually a thing called College Sweatshirt Day. Apparently, everybody kind of advertises what college they went to, or if they have a relative who went to a certain college. Whereas in Japan, people are pretty conservative about that. They don't want to advertise what company they work for or what college they went to. People are pretty humble about that, to the point where and I asked around, why does everybody in Japan have these, not everybody, but you see a lot of books with these covers. You can actually like buy fancy book covers, right? And I'm sure part of it is to protect the book so that it doesn't get damaged, but a lot of people use it so that they can protect their privacy. They don't want to let anybody else know what book they're reading. Whereas in the US, you like buy a book and put it on your coffee table just to show people like, hey, look at this awesome book I'm reading. I'm reading War and Peace, or I'm reading some influential political novel or something. So we can't instantly understand every other culture or all of our users, but what we can do is when building something is go and visit and spend time getting to know our users. This is our office. This is the Mercari office in Palo Alto. We have this nice, beautiful courtyard where people can eat at lunch. And if you're here in Tokyo, we've got beautiful offices, but not really this kind of open space and that people kind of take for granted in Palo Alto. But we try to visit as much as possible. And now, of course, we can't, right? So we've done things like travel. Mercari actually has sponsored team members to travel to other countries and kind of do research trips and come back and try to inform what we do in Japan and in the US based on innovations that are happening in other countries. Now that we can't do that, though, how do we talk to users? This is our user interview room in Palo Alto, but we would actually bring in people, show them the app, have them sit down and walk through things, try out new features, in a standard user interview, user study, without being able to do this anymore. And you can still do it over video for sure, but there's actually a really nice tool called usertesting.com that we've used. So you can just go, if you take screenshots or mock-ups of something that you're building, or even a sample site, you can have people click through it and ask them questions along the way, and they'll record their whole process of going through it with a voiceover and send back the results. So you can basically do user studies across a wide range of individuals without actually meeting up in person. It's really, really, really nice. And the other thing that we do for user testing is A/B experiments, and that's so that doesn't really change. That hasn't changed from in the pre-COVID era, but live traffic experiments where we can show a new UI to 50% of the population and the existing one to the other 50%, and then see if how they interact with Mercari changes is really the best way to measure whether or not something that we're planning to do is helpful. So with all of this, and going back to diversity, when I talk about diversity, I don't. I'm talking mostly about Japan and the team that we have here in Tokyo. The U.S. Is a whole other beast. Mercari has tried to invest in hiring people. Has been really open to hiring people from all backgrounds, especially from outside of Japan, who don't necessarily speak Japanese as their first language. And I think that that has brought back to those research trips that I mentioned earlier. People are able to bring lots of different ideas from their home countries, from their own experiences, and I think that there's a lot also in Japan that we can apply to the rest of the world and the U.S. right now. In my own experience before Mercari, it was really cool to see YouTube mobile. When we launched the first version of YouTube mobile, it was focused on Japan. The YouTube mobile team was actually headquartered here in Tokyo because we had all of the mobile users in Japan, and that really took off in Japan before it took off anywhere else. And so we were able to take, what we built for Japan and then launch that globally as mobile usage took off. This is a story from 15 years ago now, but I really feel like Japan in many ways is ahead of the rest of the world, and there's a lot that we can learn. For example, with the aging population, another thing that I'm very excited about, I think is really important for everybody who is building anything with technology, is to think about accessibility. And in Japan, with the aging population, it's really important that we think about how to make what we're building usable for people as they age. I feel like my 4-year-old son sometimes will, he wants to show me something, and he grabs it and he comes up and he like puts it right in my face, and I'm like, I've got to do this. And I always remember seeing my parents and my grandparents do that as their eyesight got worse over time, and now it's happening to me. I don't have bifocals yet, but my eye doctor warned me in a few years I'm going to need them. Thinking about all of those issues, accessibility for people with visual impairments isn't just for blind people; it's for all of us, right? We all will go through this, and even if we don't think about that right now, many of our users do care about it. This is one cool thing that I saw. This is a product in Japan. I saw a woman in an elevator once, an old woman. She wanted to, I didn't even know what it was, but she had like a loose string or something, and she wanted to cut it. Like we were in an elevator. This is kind of funny, but she like pulled out of her bag a little sewing kit, and it had this like little teeny pair of scissors so that she could cut this thing. And she had a really hard time using the scissors. And I thought, this is exactly what the kind of case that people have in mind when they're designing things like this. Stepping back from accessibility and thinking back to sharing ideas across countries. In the US, we have a lot of people who like to haggle prices. If you go to a garage sale or a flea market or something, you're guaranteed somebody's going to say like, what, you want $50 for that old pair of golf clubs? I'm only going to pay you $20. And because we had all of this demand in the US, and a lot of people even then were frustrated with handling those kind of negotiations through chat and then having to manually edit the price of an item, we built this make an offer feature that allowed people to negotiate very easily. Just like say like, hey, I'll buy it for $80, and or no, with my golf club example, it would be like, I'll buy your $50 golf clubs for $20, and then the seller can just look at that and either accept or decline, and they don't have to do anything beyond that, and instantly it's sold. After we launched that in the US, the Japan team thought that was really great, and so we launched that in Japan, and vice versa. In Japan, I think everybody takes for granted how fast it is, how easy it is to send money. So you can just walk up to an ATM machine, put in some cash, enter in the account number of the person you want to send it to, and bam, it's in their account. In the US, it takes a lot longer, but there are options, especially through debit cards, that make it possible to push money out to somebody's bank account instantaneously. And so we launched this last year, inspired by how easy it is in Japan, and have seen really, really good adoption from our sellers. And another thing is logistics. Here in Tokyo, you can buy something and have it on your door the same day. I remember when Amazon started offering same-day delivery, 10 years ago, and I was like, yeah, this is great. And then I moved back to the US, and I was like, yeah, 2 days. I was like, I gotta wait 2 days. So we just started rolling out this beta service in San Francisco, where people can have same-day delivery within a local metropolitan area. But we're really excited about that as well. So it's really nice being part of a team that is spanning 2 countries, spanning 2 really different cultures, and sharing all of these learnings back and forth and inspiring what we do in each other's country. So let's talk about telework. So this is, we've kind of been, my team here in Tokyo especially has been working a lot kind of remotely with the US. We are on video calls all day. Everything we do, we make sure that we are sharing notes online. I think compared to many other teams that are in the same time zone or the same office, we've had to do things with this kind of like remote work style in mind for a while. But as you all know, it's been really different these past few months. This was I shared this photo with my team. I figured when this is like maybe 2 months ago. This is my son sharing something that he made for his preschool class for a school project. And I was in the middle of a meeting, and my wife took this photo. Like he brought it in, and my wife took this photo. And let's see how this is. And I shared it with my team. I was like, "Yeah, I've got to take a break to talk to my son right now." And it's awesome working from home, but then we've got all these interruptions as well. But I know everybody's working to figure it out. One other fun thing here in this photo, you can kind of see, even though this is actually our bedroom. I set up my desk in a corner of our bedroom, and before, like when I found out that we were going to have to work from home, I went shopping for a desk, and I found this really cool office desk from officecom.jp, and it had filing cabinets, which were nice because I can organize all of my stuff, and just a nice form factor for my computer. And I was about to buy it, and then I searched on Mercari and I found it for half off. I was like, yes, all right. So most of what you see here is purchased, or maybe half of what you see here is a purchase on Mercari. I bought this monitor on Amazon, so that doesn't count. But then going on to like, how do we manage our work from home style? Oh, this is weird. Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah, we hear fine.
Oh, my computer's locked up. Oh, there we go. I'm back. Glad you could hear me. I think it's important to block out our time. You can kind of see this is my daily schedule. I've blocked out time when I sleep. One thing that we've all struggled with is, especially like my team, when we were asked to start working from home in February, and Mercari was one of the first companies, I believe, in Japan to start working from home. So it was optional at first, but when they gave everybody the option to work from home, everybody in my team, like the next day, was gone. Like it was completely empty. I think, especially because we were spending a lot of time in early morning video calls with the US. We had people working from home in the morning anyway, and they would take meetings in the morning and then commute and come in the office around noon. And given the option to avoid that commute, everybody was just happy to work from home. But as soon as you take away that commute, you are taking away the downtime. You're taking away the schedule that you had that kept you from going into the office too early or working too late because you have to catch the train at a certain time to get the express train going home. So I've tried to block out time to exercise in the morning, and I got this really great. I don't have it here to show you, but if you Google the hacker's diet, this is something I found a long time ago. It's a really simple exercise routine that you can do in your bedroom, just like jogging in place and doing jumping jacks and things. And it's just got this progressive set of exercises that you can do to stay somewhat in shape. Not being able to go to the gym is definitely, I feel like I've definitely gained a few pounds. Blocking off time for lunch. I always forget to eat, even at work, unless somebody invites me to go eat lunch with them. So blocking that time off for lunch, and as well as homeschool time for my son, is important. And then one other thing that we do, this US at Tokyo TGIF, you can see every week in the office at 5 o'clock, we would get away from our desks. We'd get draft beer brought in. Like I didn't, when I first asked around to see if we could get beer for this Friday event, I didn't know, but like you can actually rent these little, like a keg and a refrigerator, and the refrigerator is basically just like full of ice, and it passes the I guess this is how restaurants do it too. They just have a keg and then they pass it through like this little refrigeration unit, but it's just like a box with ice in it, and the beer flows through that and then flows out. It was pretty cool. So we pull one of those in to the office every Friday at 5 p.m. and do a TGIF party where we do some really quick announcements and then people do demos, just trying to share what they're up to. And for the first few weeks when we started working from home, we didn't do this. I think everybody was just hoping that after a few weeks we'd be able to go back into the office. But after maybe a month and a half or so, we started doing it again, and it's been really good. Just having time for the whole team, and this is big, right? Like, so usually there are like 35 or 40 people who join, and we rotate who is emceeing the presentation, and a lot of people will volunteer to give demos, and sometimes we'll do just some random Q&A. But then we also do, we make time to do fun games as well. So yeah, let's see if I can do this. There's one, scribble.io is really fun. We've done this a few times. It's like Pictionary, except you can do it online. I don't know if there's a good, yeah, I should have, oh, here we go, how to play it, but there's a good, oh, come on. Oh, there's no screenshot in here. Anyway, I didn't think I had to take a screenshot of this, but I highly recommend this. It's a lot of fun. You can have, like 5 to 10 people in a room trying to draw and get everybody to guess what you're drawing. It's fun to, we did it once so with like 40 people, we split into 4 different teams, and we were all playing at the same time, all on a video call so that we could talk and joke while playing. Highly recommend it. I hope all of you guys have tried some kind of virtual nomikai by now. The last thing on my calendar here is GTD. If you haven't read David Allen's Getting Things Done, I feel like every few years I have to reread the book, and I always am kind of half implementing all of the recommendations, but I do my best. And especially sitting here by myself without having hallway conversations to keep track of what everybody else is working on. The least I can do is keep track of what I'm working on and what all of the balls that are up in the air, and try to keep my to-do list in check. And then most important is family and sleep time, which I try really hard. So today I'm breaking that rule. My wife actually brought me my dinner so I could eat it right before this. All right. So maybe I just have a few more slides. We'll talk for maybe 5 minutes or so, and we can go into Q&A. Tools that we use, Google Meet is we're all in Google at Mercari, so Gmail, Google Docs, and all of that, and that's really good. Again, just for remote collaboration, if you have a Google Doc, you can edit at the same time, comment. A lot of times for meetings, even though we're in video chat, we'll just have a doc open and not necessarily even sharing it, but we're all just in the doc at the same time, either taking notes together or editing a doc together. We're on Zoom right now, and we can go to this grid view and see everybody, or almost everybody who's on the call. You haven't been able to do that with Google Meet. They just launched a new version that lets you show 16 people at a time, but there's this really cool extension, the Google Grid View Chrome extension, that you can add, and it will throw up everybody's icon on this. And so I have one screenshot, an internal screenshot, where we have about, I think we had 217 people join for the call. That's pretty crazy. Even though we're on, in these virtual meetings, a lot of people have tried to pretend like we're in the office. Sometimes it, I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing, but this is a really cool Chrome extension that somebody on our team created. So actually somebody else within Mercari prepared these virtual backgrounds that we could use with the Mercari logo, and these are actual snapshots of a meeting room in the Mercari office in Roppongi Hills. And then one guy on our team made this extension so you can just click use virtual backgrounds and it'll automatically add it in Google Meet. It's pretty cool. And then we got to make it fun with all of this. It's I read an article in the New York Times the other day about how we have, people are talking about Zoom fatigue, where you're staring at your computer all the time. It feels like you have to be staring right at the camera and making eye contact, but you can't really make eye contact because the person's eyes are actually down here. And so I definitely find that a little bit awkward, but I'm making the most of it. And ManyCam is an app you can download, and it actually doesn't work with Zoom anymore, unfortunately, but with Google Meet and probably other video conferencing options, you can use this virtual camera that it sets up. And one time somebody told me that my microphone here made me look like an airplane pilot. So I thought, hey, we'll just go all the way and pretend I'm an airplane pilot. I thought I wanted to share my little airplane pilot thing here on this call here, but I couldn't do it with Zoom, so you'll have to deal with that. The other main tool that we use to work is Slack, and for better or worse, Mercari doesn't use email at all. We use email to talk with like remote vendors, any third-party vendors that we work with or partners, but all of our work internally is really over Slack. So company-wide announcements, daily work, even deployments. So if we're pushing something to production, we have a Slack channel that's dedicated for releases and a bot that handles the deployment. And so all of the interactions about, verifying that everything is ready to go, that everybody's signed off, actually pushing the button to deploy something to production, all of that happens in Slack. And it's really nice. It's like we're all in a virtual room. It's really easy to have the work in context of a conversation. The downside being that things get lost in that, as things scroll up, it's easier to get things lost, but there are a lot of hacks that you can do to try to keep track of that as well. One thing that we didn't use before, that at least most of my team didn't use as much as Hangouts, is the Slack phone call and video sharing. I think I remember back, it was like 2014 or 2015 or something, Slack acquired this video screen sharing company. I forget now what it was called. It was like Hotspot or Hot something. And I was really excited. I was like, okay, great. Slack is going to add video sharing. And then it didn't launch forever. But after it launched, it's actually really, really good for, it's like a quick one-on-one chat. You see the green icon next to somebody's name in Slack. You can just quickly, ping them, call them, share your screen. And then there's actually this really cool highlight function where you can draw on their screen while they're sharing. And that's actually been really, really good for pair programming, helping people debug something that they're working on, so that in fact, I found it's kind of better than the interaction that we had in the office, where we would jump up from your desk, you go over to somebody else's desk, you tap them on the shoulder, and it's like, hey, can you give me a hand? And then you put your laptop down next to them and you're kind of like leaning over it, but then the more you're talking, you're annoying people next to you. And you're like, okay, let's go grab a room or go find a monitor that we can plug into so that we can see a bigger screen. And now if you want to have a quick chat, you don't have to move anywhere. You just bam, share your screen, and that's actually really, really good. And so in many ways, I hope that we can stay working this way, even if we go back to work from the office sometimes. I want to just not have to unplug my laptop from my monitor. To give you an idea for to what extent we use Slack at Mercari, and going back to how we support all of our teammates who are from different countries. Somebody implemented this reaction in Mercari that uses Google Translate to take whatever you wrote and then translate it into Japanese. And so if you do this N to JA, it'll translate to Japanese, and then we have a JA to EN that will translate in the other direction. It's not necessarily accurate all the time, as machine translation may not be, but it's really helpful. And that, speaking of machine translation and machine, oh, there we go. Is somebody pointing at something? What is that? I guess Zoom, you can do that in Zoom too, annotate. There we go. Does anyone volunteer? What is that pointing to something? Am I pointing to somebody's arrow?
Yeah, it seems as though you're pointing
Oh, yeah. So yeah, this is I don't use Zoom enough, obviously, but yeah, I guess I've always seen this annotate button, but I've never actually used it. See clear all drawings. There we go. Look at that. Oh, yeah. So like there are a lot of tools, and we're all, experimenting. I think with all of this too, every day I feel like we do something different. Another thing that we started, playing with a little bit at Mercari is Pragly. There are a few teams that are using this. This is kind of a cool tool where, similar to Slack, and this actually feels a little bit like that the Remo thing that I saw on the Venture Cafe page too, where it's just easier to quickly ping somebody and move to a different room if you want to have a side conversation. So this is also something we've tried out. Oh, look, Mercari's logo is even here. Look at that. Oh, anyway, so those are all the slides that I prepared. So I hope to hear how have you guys been adapting to telework, and I'd love to talk more about what we've done, what my team has done at Mercari, and but also hear from all of you guys as well about what you've learned and any advice you have.
Yeah. Well, Brad, first and foremost, thanks so much for sharing that, and I thought it was really insightful. And I definitely learned a lot from that. What we can do for questions, what we can do is if you do have a question, go ahead and just write it in the chat, and then from there, Brad or I can answer it from there. And then if not, let's start with that, and then from there, we can move forward. So please, guys, go ahead. If you have any questions, go ahead and type it in the Zoom chat.